Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live edition here on my channel, Luis Borrero, Visual Artist. Today, I have a really special presentation. We're going to do part two of the Vermeer demonstration. I have an exciting demonstration that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. Now, for 2 weeks, I've been talking about Vermeer's techniques. We started with the pigments, a little bit of the history, and today I have the full demonstration. Now this painting that you see behind me is the demonstration, it's a reconstruction. I like to call these demonstrations reconstructions because I'm using historical materials and I'm also using a sequence of techniques that have been documented by scientists in some of the websites. Now, I would like, before we get started, I want to share with you the resource where I'm getting this information from. So in the description below, you will find the articles that I used. Now, the articles that I use are really innovative. They have maps, and this is I believe it's a new technique that they're using now. They're creating these maps using different imaging techniques to detect the different pigments, the pigment distribution on the surface of the paintings. And this is innovative. And in particular, this website that I'm going to be sharing with you guys has a whole array of maps for the flesh, for the background, for the turban. So I used these very maps and wrote down all the pigments and created sort of a sequence. And in this demonstration, you're going to see this whole sequence mapped out in a logical order. So that's exactly what I'm doing. And let's just take a look at an image here of just an example of the maps that I'm going to be using. So this map right here is from, and here's the link. You guys could check it out. So they use these maps to sort of distribute the elements, the lead, mercury, if there's an iron oxide content, especially in the headscarf. So it tells the scientists exactly what the painter would have been using. That's exactly what I used. Went through these articles and just went step by step, mapping out all the pigments and how Vermeer would have been using these pigments in his Girl with a Pearl Earring. So, and you'll see in the demonstration that that's exactly what I'm doing. I divided the demonstration in chapters. Each chapters represents a giornata. What's a giornata? Well, it represents one layer, meaning for the full day, I worked on that one layer and brought it to a finish, and I will indicate when that's not the case. So now, before I start, showing the demonstration, I want to talk a little bit about the pigments. For 2 weeks, I've been talking about the pigments. I'm using historical pigments. The pigments that I use, some I made on my own, such as the lead white. And last week, I talked about 2 different types of lead white that they find. I'm going to be talking about that in detail. There's also an article that I've shared in the description below as well, so you guys could check that out. The difference between cerussite and hydrocerussite. So you could learn more about that for those of you that are into chemistry. But if you're not into chemistry, that's okay. I'm going to just explain it in plain terms. One of the things also, the pigments that I'm using are mostly from Kramer Pigments. He's a world-renowned pigment manufacturer in Germany, and you can look him up on Google. Just wonderful pigments. And I'm using his Weld pigment, which is a wonderful pigment that Vermeer used. It is a fugitive pigment, and I'm also using his indigo. And these are pigments that would have been available. I did not make those on my own. I just opted to buy them because they're very difficult pigments to make. So onto themselves, they're already fugitive and difficult. So I use those especially for the background. I'm going to be talking about that. So, all right, well, again, thank you for coming by, and thank you for your wonderful support. Your questions are valuable to me, and also your comments. So throughout the live presentations, if you have any comments or questions, I'm here to answer, anything that any doubts that you may have. So Thanks again for coming by and for subscribing to the channel. We're at 1,100 followers or subscribers, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to subscribe. If you haven't done so, please subscribe so you could get the notifications and also for future videos. Enjoy the content. So, all right, so let's just get started with this demonstration. This is 2 weeks of work, and I'm going to go ahead and share the whole process. Now, we're going to recap what we did last week, and we're going to put everything together now in one cohesive demonstration. So let's take a look at that. So for those of you that are just joining, we started with the undersketch once again and established the underdrawing with brown paint and also charcoal black and a little bit of bone black as well. He seems to have used 2 types of black for his underpainting and the painting as a whole. So I established this this underpainting under sketch using just a very loose style and not really focused on a lot of detail, just more concerned with the composition and the placement and the big blocks of light and shade. So I just continue, and this is almost like a stain quality. This is a pretty straightforward technique that a lot of painters use, and the reason is because you could keep the paint very lean. I am mixing the paint with just a little bit of solvent, spike oil of lavender in this case, to thin down the paint. You could also use turpentine, but I like the solvent spike oil because it's much better. And then I just move on to refining what I already have. And with a mall stick, I just go on and I refine the drawing and I try to model the paint a little bit, not too much, just to get more of a rotation. And even using my fingers to sort of get the transitions. And there you see that in the shadow, I'm using a little bit of red lake with the bone black just to get more of a warm color. And I'm using cochineal lake, which I mentioned in the last live presentation. And that's going to help me just get that warmth. So you'll notice also that I'm using calipers. And the calipers are just, they help me keep the painting loose. And if I need to correct something, I just bring the calipers right over the surface. And I don't need to, be too concerned with being, very fastidious with the drawing. So I could just work in a very loose style with the calipers. It allows me to do that. And also I've switched now to a polecat hair brush. I started with a bristle brush, and the polecat hair brush will help me to establish the overall, composition. So, and the loose brush quality. So I want to be very conscientious of the value structures. Now, in both the background and the turning of the turban, he used black as an underpainting. That's important to mention. So here I'm beginning with the dead color, and this layer is yellow ochre, white, black, and a little bit of red lake. Okay, and this is important because I thought that he would be using black and white to make a traditional grisaille, but that's not the case here. He seems to have used sort of a cream color or a dead color, sort of greenish underpainting or grisaille, if you will. And at first I was a little bit, puzzled by this. And as I finished the painting, I realized how effective this layer of paint is. You could just veil some very, very, very subtle color right on top, and it gives you the perfect neutrality. So just a wonderful technique. So, and I'm also, I'm applying the paint, I'm softening the paint, and just doing a lot of soft modeling. mixing a lot of transitions. If you look at my palette right there, I've mixed all my transitions on my palette, and I'm just applying them and fusing the colors together. So in a very sort of a smooth style. This surface in itself is somewhat absorbent, but very smooth. And by the second layer, once you apply that first layer of paint, you have just the perfect amount of absorbency. So just a wonderful technique. And again, it's just no color yet, just a little bit of the red lake there with vermilion for the shadow color, and that's on the second pass. There's 3 layers um, of paint on the shadow side, and it's vermilion, black, red lake, and perhaps a little bit of earth color, yellow ochre, excuse me. So, so the lips, I've decided to go ahead and just apply with color. So I'm using vermilion, red lake, just in the first layers. Maybe he used an underpainting in the yellow ochre, black, but I decided to just go ahead and explore the color there. So the color of the shadow is somewhat opaque, translucent, I would describe it. And I'm continuing to just, get as much detail worked out in this first layer as I possibly can, knowing that those last layers are going to be, veils or Bellaturas. So I just want to be, very conscientious of that type of development in this painting. This painting is very controlled. And here's the second dead color. Okay, the second layer, they find 2 layers, as you saw in the chemical analysis or the paint cross sections, find 2 layers of paint, okay, under color. And this made sense. This allowed for a very sort of polished underpainting layer. And on top of this, I will do the Bellaturas, as you will see towards the end of the demonstration. So I'm using a very beautiful round number 4 brush, Skoda brush. This is a Kolinsky Sable, and this allows for a lot of control with the moss stick and a lot of drawing with the paint. And from time to time, I'll use the calipers to correct the drawing and to do comparative measurements. But and also to do the softening, I'm using a squirrel hair brush. Very concerned with contouring as well, and the edges. Very, very soft edges in this painting, and that's one of the things that I was shocked working through this whole project, is how soft Vermeer's edges are. He seems to have softened every edge. Sometimes they're overlapped, sometimes they're butted together, and he has a whole array of edges. If you're interested in really learning how to control your edges, this is the perfect painting to study in doing so. So just a great lesson in edges and in transitions as well. So I'm being very conscientious about refining the drawing, refining the tones as best as I can, knowing that really I'm setting up the painting to just write from this to a finish. So they do find 3 layers of paint on the flesh, which 2 under layers of dead color and 1 upper layer of Bellatura or veiled color, more transparent color. And when I say transparent, I don't mean transparent fully. I'm talking about translucent color. And I'll be talking about that last layer, what type of white he uses, okay, which is very different from this layer. I use a hydrocerussite, which is just the basic lead carbonate, and for the last layer, they find cerussite or higher content of cerussite, which is a lead white that has a higher content of neutral lead that results in a more transparent white. So really ingenious technique. There I'm working on the second layer of the the shadow color, okay, and just really refining with the tip of the brush the drawing of the eyes, trying to get that precision. The color is nothing but lead white, yellow ochre, black, and just in spots. I'm using a little bit of cochineal lake, but hardly. They find hardly any cochineal lake, only occasionally. You can see that all these analyses are in the description below, in the links that I've provided, and you could essentially take a look yourself and check them out. So here we're moving on now to glazing the background. And I want to stop this video. If you could stop, let's see. I'm just trying to show, okay, right there. Okay, we have weld and indigo. These two colors are what they find in the background. Very shocking. I thought there would be a brownish color. It's not. It's indeed a green. And these are two very fugitive colors that are no longer used by artists. And the weld is difficult. It's a difficult color. Again, I didn't make these colors. I just decided to get them from Kramer Pigments. And I mixed these two colors together to get a green, also a tiny bit of lead white. They do find lead white, and combination of earth colors such as perhaps umber or even yellow ochre or red ochre. So I mixed these colors to get a green, and that's what you'll see. Now this glaze is semi-transparent, okay, and it goes right over the black. All right, let's fire up the video. Let's see. You won't be able to detect much of a difference initially because it's very dark and the camera, it was hard to get an exposure, but on my palette, there you could get an idea of the green color. And these colors are fugitive. They have faded with time, and it results in a distortion of color. And again, you'll see how different the colors are fresh. If you're probably wondering what the colors look like when Vermeer finished the painting, probably what I'm getting there is closer to what he would have gotten. But again, these colors do vary in shades, you know, and I couldn't really be sure of the right value because, you know, I'm not in front of the original. But from the reproductions, which are pretty good, it seems to be sort of a blanched color, and that makes sense. The substrate for the weld is chalk, and they find a high percentage of chalk, and that that color will, with time, will become sort of lighter and a lot more transparent. So they also find a copper dryer, and I didn't use a copper dryer because I didn't think it was necessary. I thought maybe he didn't have a lead dryer, so he used maybe a copper dryer. But I found out it's a neat accident. After a day after I painted this, the color died horribly. It sort of turned into a yellowish color, and I have never used this combination of colors before in one of my paintings. So it was difficult to sort of gauge that background color. So here's the laying in of the turban with lapis lazuli. And this was probably the most shocking part. This is lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. And I got this pigment from Natural Pigments, a reputable brand. And he has an Afghanistan lapis lazuli, which I find very bright. I don't know if the pigment has been prepared in the Cennino-Cennini method, but I found it very bright. And even there in the painting, you see how much, you know, Vermeer's painting has, you know, the color that he originally used has faded quite a bit. And it has also yellow, so it looks kind of greenish. Now, I shared a video in the last live presentation of a museum conservator that talks about the possibility of this lapis application having a lake color, and I did explore that, and I'm going to be talking about in the glazing section. I did let this dry, okay, And now we're going to move into the jacket, the yellow jacket. I'm applying yellow ochre, gold ochre, okay, beautiful gold ochre from Kramer Pigments with a big brush, bristle brush, right over the underpainting. Now, all this underpainting is fully dry, okay, and and so uh, yeah, so let's just stop that for a minute, and you'll see that it's very bold, and yeah, so the application is very bold, and I now I'm getting a distortion in color as well. Now the ultramarine fades with time, so again, I'm thinking that perhaps what you see there, the ultramarine has become sort of uh, blanched, and it's not, the color seems a lot more white, sort of whitish. So I struggle with that initially in matching the color because they only find ultramarine, lead white, and yellow ochre. There is a big range of yellow ochres, so perhaps I used the lightest yellow ochre that I could find. But my ultramarine seemed very, very powerful, very, very bright. And that's not what Vermeer has there. So that was puzzling to me. So it seems that, even the jacket has faded some. All right, so let's continue here. And I also use, in the shadows, they find red lake, black, ultramarine, and an earth color as well. So that's exactly what I use for the shadow side as well. And initially it was a bit dark, and knowing that I was probably going to have to put a Bellatura on top, I pushed it a little bit darker, and just trying to hang on to the underpainting as much as I could, because he does seem to have hung on to the underpainting in the shadow area. So very bold, and this is all wet into wet. And my initial reaction was to just go ahead and finish this in one single wet layer. But as I worked on the painting, I realized that there were some effects that seemed like he let the paint dry a little bit. And so I came to the conclusion that maybe the paint was still sort of tacky, and then he applied more paint on top. So that's what I did here. I just went ahead and, uh, just apply a paler type of yellow right on top with more lead white. I look at the maps, and it seemed like he used a lot more lead white, and the color was still, much more different. And I believe it's because of my ultramarine, the ultramarine blue that I have. And of course, this painting is 400 years old, so you're not going to get the exact colors. The ultramarine does fade with time. It gets a little bit blanched. Um, so um, Sweaty Palms, thank you for coming by, joining. Yeah. All right. So now I'm blocking in the head scarf. And now this was shocking. I thought this was lead tin yellow mostly, and that's not the case. They've only find an iron oxide and lead white and ultramarine, and that's essentially what I use. I use my gold ochre in proportions with my lead white, and a little bit of umber for the shadows, and that's consistent with what they find. On the very end of the headscarf, they do find lead tin yellow, and in this case, I did not get to finish that the turban. So, excuse me, the headscarf. So here's the glaze, and this is the glaze that has ultramarine. Okay, now let's just stop this for 2 minutes. Okay, so this glaze was very mysterious to me. Okay, so I used lapis lazuli to begin with, tested it out. It seemed way too dark and way too bright. So I had to sort of tone it back. And they find quite a bit of chalk in the ultramarine. So I decided to apply the glaze with uh, chalk, mix it with chalk, heat-bodied oil, and just a tiny bit of weld. They find, some sort of, they theorize that Vermeer might have used a lake color there. So that's exactly what I did. I just mixed a tiny bit of weld, and it gave me sort of a greenish tint, and makes sense. The paintings harmonize mostly with blue and green and yellow, so it makes sense that he would have put a little bit of yellow into the blue to make it harmonize a little bit better. Demonstration. So let's move on to the final Bellatura, which is the most interesting part of the demonstration here. So I started with a layer, very thin layer, using vermilion, yellow ochre, black, and a little bit of red lake. Okay, this is probably the most mysterious part of the whole process. The Bellatura goes just as a thin veil right over the underpainting in yellow ochre, black, and lead white. And this is just where that cerussite material really shines. It's a material that is, if you thin it with oil, especially I'm using here heat-bodied walnut oil and also heat-bodied linseed oil. So it gave me just a gorgeous sort of porcelain consistency, and I was able to just put that. Now, I prepared this lead white specifically from a very finely ground lead white that I have. And indeed, it's a cerussite containing lead white. I did the whole research, and I had a lead white that I had let stand for 3 months. And apparently, after 2 months, the reaction results in a lead white that is more richer in neutral lead carbonate. So, and that's essentially what I did. I even had the lead white tested by a local scientist that helped me out, and indeed contained a high proportion of neutral lead carbonate. So this results in a very beautiful material for Bellatura, and I'm just applying it in just the most subtle way with a very fine sable brush. And this is a very subtle operation. This is a veil that goes right over the underpainting. It's supposed to be, very methodical. I'm very much interested in the edges. This just veils right over. If you go to the micro panel images, you'll see this technique right before your eyes when you get close to the painting. He just veils that initial underpainting. And this is very much like a Renaissance artist. We have, this is the same technique that a painter like Leonardo da Vinci would have employed. So a beautiful technique, and I'm also veiling the shadow with just very thin veil of vermilion, black, red lake, and a little bit of yellow ochre as well. That's what they find. And also here in the collar, the white collar, I'm also putting a veil. Okay, so everything is, and even the edges. I even re-wet the edges. So these are the finishing touches, and I'm just really concerned with the most minute, subtle shift in tone, and I'm using a squirrel hair brush to soften every edge. Every edge has to be softened, otherwise the painting just starts looking very sharp, and not really consistent with Vermeer's technique. So the malt stick, this is an operation. This one layer took me close to 10 hours, nonstop, and it's all wet into wet, much like a fresco painter. There's the earring, and it's just a veil of white. I'm thinning down the paint and just scumbling it right over the dark ground, okay? And this is exactly what he did, just to get that, that effect. And now I'm just really concerned with the drawing. I'm just really measuring everything, every facet, putting all the highlights, making sure that all the values are correct, and applying just the most thin veil of paint, and just trying to get that subtlety, that Vermeer. There I'm working on the edges of the edge between the turban and the background. And here's the finish. And here I'm slowed down the video so you can see. Um, let's see. So I have uh, just the most subtle Bellatura of of lapis lazuli on the shadow side. And you can see now the videos of higher quality in this last excerpt, because I wanted to show you the just the subtle values that I was able to achieve. And um, I'm just applying just a veil, just a very thin veil of cerussite, uh, lapis lazuli, chalk, and a little bit of heat-bodied oil, just to sort of veil over that initial black. And you see that he sort of used that technique. He leaves the black show through slightly. And at first, when I started laying in the painting, I was sort of perplexed why he was just punching the black or just applying black on the bottom layer. And it makes sense. I mean, it's he's gonna let that show through, and it's like 3 layers of paint, that are gonna, or 4 layers of paint that are sort of creating that illusion. So wonderful technique, amazing demonstration here of just a virtuoso artist using techniques from the Renaissance, pigments from his age, and perhaps he used a camera obscura. The soft edges, the obsession with the soft edges makes me believe that, leads me to believe that he used a camera obscura, or perhaps, not strictly to work from the portrait, but as he was influenced by that image, certainly. Um, Even in the way that the nose gets lost, I thought there was a variation in tone there, and I just, I kept needing to sort of unify that area of the nose and the cheek. That's a photographic effect, essentially, and it's the effect that you see in the camera obscura. So I'm very much convinced that he used perhaps in the camera obscura to achieve this painting. Also, the scale. I mean, if you look at the scale of the painting, it feels almost like a life-size scale. So wonderful technique. There you saw a reconstruction using the very same colors. Now, I've shared on the description below a link to the lead white article where they talk about the formation of plumbonacrite, hydrocerussite, and then to cerussite. And very interesting article. And the scientists that published the article are indeed scientists from the Rijksmuseum. They were involved in this project with the Girl in the Spotlight, where I believe they were. And yeah, so it's just an amazing, amazing technique. So now, for those of you that are coming by every week, again, thank you for stopping by. I really, really apologize for the delays today and the technical difficulties. Live streaming is always difficult, but I enjoy it because I get to interact with all of you, and I get to hear your comments and to answer your questions. So, I'm very thankful for your support. This will be recorded, so you'll be able to see the full recording. And for those of you that are interested in, um, the learning painting and learning drawing, I'm going to be publishing these demonstrations, full demonstrations, I mean, this is a 2-week demonstration, um, and compressed in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 25 minutes. So by no means could you ever know, all the things, all the decisions that I made in, in doing this painting. But I'll be publishing an art, a course in the Udemy server, also with my Rembrandt demonstration. I'm going to be publishing that fairly soon. So make sure to stay in touch. You could write me a private message if you're interested in some of the courses. Also, I have the other courses that are dedicated to classical drawing and classical drawing techniques. So check those out in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be coming back with another live presentation in 2 weeks' time. And let's see, do we have a question? I think we have a question from Alex. Let's see. Alex, thank you for coming by. Do you think that there's any trace of indigo in the turban besides the lapis lazuli? Because the lapis by itself is so much blue and I get a feeling of indigo. It could be. I thought about it, and it could be that there's a little bit of indigo in there as well. I did not try the indigo, and the reason is because the indigo, it's just when you use it, it's you could just tell it's an unstable color, and it just seems like even in the background, dry, very, very weird, and it changed drastically from even in 2 days. So I was cautious of the indigo pigment. I haven't used it, and in one of I decided to do research because these pigments would have been known by artists from that time that were using these pigments constantly. They would have known the defects of some of the pigments. So I went back to my manuscripts, and Palomino does describe to use smalt as a dryer for indigo. So I got curious about that, and perhaps Vermeer, he describes to use smalt, boil the linseed oil with smalt. And they do find that a similar technique with Rembrandt. So it could be that he used indigo with the lapis, but I did not want to, I will be honest, Alex, I did not want to taint my lapis, beautiful $300 lapis lazuli with indigo, an inferior pigment. So perhaps, economics has something to do with that. So, but it is an interesting question, and I did do some tests, and the closest pigment to or the closest shade that I could achieve was the weld, just a tiny bit of weld with lapis lazuli. Thank you for coming by, and your questions very valuable. Thank you. Ron, thank you for coming by. Does the size of the brush matters, or or is how you use it that counts? The size of the brush does matter. When you're laying in a painting, you want very bold strokes to just sort of get that movement. This is described by a lot of the old manuscripts and old treatises on painting, because you get a lot of movement. But as you close in forms, you want to change the brush, and you want to use softer brushes such as sable or squirrel hair brushes. In this particular case, I found myself using small brushes for the eyes. And even if you go into the description below, the micro panel link, you could get a very, very enlarged reproduction, and you could see all the details. And this is a painting that was done with a lot of precision. I'm a loose painter by nature, but I found myself working in a very, very controlled style with sable brushes and tiny brushes, so especially around the eyes and the highlights. So it's important to take that into account. So again, thank you for your valuable questions and your visit. much appreciated, and your wonderful support. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. This was 2 weeks, 2 weeks of work for me, and I learned a lot. I get to have a Vermeer in my collection now. I will continue to work on it. A few more touches of lead tin yellow, which I didn't get to use because of the time limit. The painting probably took a month, 2 months to do, perhaps even longer. But I had to compress everything in 2 weeks to be able to, meet with you guys here on the live presentation. But I'm going to be continuing to work on it, and I'm going to varnish the painting, which will make a big difference. And I will report back any changes in the color, the background. Again, I already saw, even from a week of passing time, I saw a change in the color of the background. So even in the video, you could see it. So that's important to know, and that's why these pigments, the weld is no longer around, because it's a pigment that is fugitive, and Kramer Pigment makes it. I don't believe that he's using a historical method to make it. I believe that he's replaced the chalk with perhaps an aluminum substrate. So yeah, so very interesting to explore these techniques. And again, so thank you for coming by. I'm going to say goodbye now, and thank you for joining. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel. I highly appreciate the support and your comments. And check out the links. So I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. All right. Enjoy your weekend.